Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to
Afternoon.
you.
I am Erin Copeland, and welcome to the most important day of my life, July 19th. Today is Regina's birthday. And who is Regina? Regina is my husband's liver. Who names her liver? Someone who's had a liver transplant. And I still need to do some kind of survey in the community to determine how many transplant recipients have actually named their organ. I feel like it's maybe 50-50. I feel like it's maybe 50-50 or maybe 60-40, but we're going to see. I'm going to have to do that. But today is really probably the most important day of my life. And I'm sure you can see how it would be an important day for my husband because today is the day his life was saved. But why is it an important day for me? Yes, because my husband is still alive. That is super important because I like him. Go figure. I like my husband. But there's a deeper meaning because today is the day I received a message that changed the entire trajectory of my life. And I'm going to tell you the story. So, Jerry was diagnosed with liver cancer in 2009. And there's a lot of things that happened in that time frame. We moved from California to Texas. We moved from Texas to Florida. We went through the transplant intake process in 3 different states, ultimately with 4 different medical centers. So the experience was kind of wild on its own and just not normal. And during the time we were in Florida, we knew we were going to be moving from our rental home to a permanent home. We were looking for a permanent home to buy. And people knowing that Jerry was on the transplant list would say, "Hey, how is Jerry? Is he doing well? When's he going to get his transplant?" And if you don't already know, a transplant isn't like you can just make an appointment and be like, "Hey, can we get the new organ today?" There's a process, there is a list. And instead of explaining the entire process to people, I would say, "Oh, as long as it's the day after we move, I'll be fine." And people would ask at networking events, family would ask. And I always said the same thing. As long as it's the day after we move, I'll be fine. And I said it, I mean, probably over a year's time. I don't know, 50 to 100 times. Just kept saying the same thing. As long as it's the day after we move, I'll be fine. And we found a lovely home. We found a lovely home to buy, single story, remodeled. It was really a perfect home for us. We were very, very excited. And so the movers came, they picked up all the stuff from the rental, they drove it to the new house. We are unloading the truck, and I'm telling the foreman, like, "Okay, can you put the dresser over here? Or actually, I might really want on this wall over here. This is going to be the living room. This is going to be the office." Just going through all of those moving logistics. And during that process, I realized my husband had disappeared. Didn't know where he was. So I head toward the back of the house and I hear him out in the backyard and he's on the phone and I hear him say, "Right now, well, it's really not a good time." And when you have that sensation of just chills running up your spine, it was electricity just boom. And I opened the door and I said, "Jerry, who are you talking to?" And he said, "It's Karen at Cleveland Clinic. They have a liver for me, but I'm telling her it's really not a good time because we're moving." So I, quite unceremoniously, grabbed the phone from him and I said, "Karen, it's Erin. How much time do we have?" She said, "I can give you 15 minutes and then we need to move to the next person on the list." I hung up the phone. And I mean, this is very normal for transplants. That's how transplants work. If you're not there, if you don't answer the phone, if you are unavailable, the viability of the organ is a specific amount of time. So they can't just hang out and wait for you. So they have to go to the next person on the list. And so Jerry and I had a very serious conversation because he said, I cannot leave you with all these boxes. There's just boxes everywhere. And I said, baby, boxes, boxes I can handle. Is there some other reasons? There's some other thing going on, some reason you don't want to transplant? I mean, no, I want to live. And so we called Karen back. We got our instructions. We had to be there by midnight. And so I said, okay, movers are here. We got to deal with this. So I go to the foreman. I said, remember everything I told you? Lovely, moving foreman person. Forget everything I said. Just get it off the truck into the house because we got to go. And so they unloaded the truck. We had to go back to the rental house and collect the cats. We had to bring the cats home. We're calling family members saying, getting the transplant. And they were like, right now? Like, yep, right now, it's time. And we had strict instructions on what Jerry could eat because pre-surgery. So like we went through the drive-through at Boston Market and got clear broth because remember, we had just moved. So everything we owned was in a box. In a box. So we had no plates, we had no silverware, we had no pots and pans, we had no food, we had nothing. We were a whole hot mess. And so we did that. We made the bed. Jerry's like, we got to make the bed so that when you come home, you have a place to crash. Like, thankfully, he thought of that. I didn't even think of that. And we made the bed. And we got the cat set up, and we went to the hospital. And there's a process during the transplant because they call you, and you got to get your booty there, but they still have to test the organ to make sure it's viable, to make sure it's going to work, that it's going to function. And so they check you in, they hook you up. So he's in his gown, he's ready to go. And then we just waited. We had to wait for the organ to arrive, for the surgeon to arrive, for everything to be checked out. And I climbed into the little hospital bed next to him because it was that moment that I got scared because I realized he was going into this life-threatening surgery. Yes, it was meant to save his life, but it's a 7-8 hour surgery. Anything can happen. And we couldn't sleep. We had the TV on, but we couldn't sleep. And I just laid there. And finally, they came in and they said, everything's good. We are good. We are good to go. And they wheeled him back in for surgery. And I got my instructions. I went to the waiting room. I collected, at the time they had a pager system. So I got a lanyard with like this giant black pager on it that I was just like holding to my heart waiting. They had monitors in the waiting room. They show the patient's, they didn't show the patient's name. It was a number associated with the patient for privacy. And you could see when they went from pre-op into the operation and then post-op so that you kind of knew what was going on. And I sat there. And as I waited there, I looked at the clock to see what time it was. And it was 7 o'clock a.m. And in that moment, I realized it was the day after our move. As long as it's the day after we move, be fine. Now, if I had known, if I had believed, if I had had a faith, I would have said, well, obviously someone is listening to me and I need to give myself more than one day. Like I would have said, hey, as long as it's a month after we move, I'll be fine. For sure would have asked for more time. Um, as it turns out, I'm fine. I'm fine. The surgery took it 7 or 8 hours. My husband survived the surgery. My husband survived the complications after the surgery. My husband survived oh my gosh, I think his cancer has recurred 4 different times now. He has survived every single one, and every single one has been a learning lesson for me. But it was on this day, July 19th, this was the day that changed my life because of that story. It was that story. That story was so powerful for me, that experience, because so many things happen in life that we write off as a coincidence. Oh, oh, isn't that funny? Oh, I had that idea. I thought of you. All these things, and we write them off as coincidence. I couldn't write that experience off as a coincidence, as long as it's the day after we move. And that transplant, he got wheeled back into surgery at 7 a.m. the day after we moved. You can't convince me. You can't convince me otherwise. And because of that experience, it made me pay even closer attention to every other experience that we had, because all of it, there was an interesting twist, an interesting story behind every experience we had. And it was those experiences that made me realize, wait, this is extraordinary. And that's what made me need to write a book. I had Dr. Gabriel Schnickel, who is Jerry's transplant surgeon. He wrote the foreword to my book, Welcome to Caregiving, the things caregivers never talk about. And he said, why are you writing a book? And I said, the words came out because I had to. And that book became an Amazon bestseller at its launch. That book, I've gotten messages from countless people hearing the message and letting me know that they felt less alone. That book it opened a path for me to speak to people about my experience and what I had learned and what caregivers actually experience. And so it's even more people that get to think differently about caregiving, how they approach caregiving, how they approach caregivers, how they work together, how the system works. So it's changed everything about my life. It's changed everything. And I have to, the other portion, like the biggest portion of it changing my life is so rooted in gratitude, because without the donor family, none of this was possible. I wouldn't have my husband. My message wouldn't be out in the world. I wouldn't have been able to talk at conferences and speak with social workers and speak with other caregivers. And the message wouldn't be out there if it wasn't for this family who made a choice to donate the organs of their loved one. So special thanks to our donor family and to every donor family that is out there. Our donor, Jerry's donor, was a young woman, and she didn't live far from here, which it's how the regions work, and that's written in my book, which was reviewed by UNOS. So another thanks to UNOS for taking the time to review my book to make sure that everything in there was accurate. And she saved my husband's life. I have on my website a link to the 5 myths about organ donation. So if you have questions about that, not really sure, maybe you've kind of thought about being an organ donor, but not really, or yeah, you just have questions, I invite you to download that and check it out. It's free. Special thanks to all of the doctors that have helped us. I mean, there's too many to name. Dr. Gabriel Schnickel, who is now at UC San Diego. He was Jerry's transplant surgeon. He wrote the foreword to my book. Dr. Diego Reno, where is Dr. Reno now? I'm not sure where he's working right now, maybe in Tampa. I'll have to find out. He took care of my husband during post-transplant complications when my husband contracted graft versus host disease, which is whole other story. Because again, not normal in solid organ transplants. Special thanks to Dr. Bobby Zervos, who is now director of the transplant department with Cleveland Clinic, Florida. Our pre-nurse coordinator, Karen McAlevey-Nort, also at Cleveland Clinic. She, Karen is my angel. She's the one that made that call. She took care of us before the transplant. She has helped us. I think every time Jerry's cancer has come back, Karen, our story and connection with Karen is very, very special. I love Karen very, very much. All of our post-transplant coordinators, and there have been quite a few. And that's just the team in Florida. There was Dr. Glenn Helf in San Antonio, Dr. Juan Guerrero in San Antonio. In the LA teams, those are also very interesting stories. And even the experiences that were not amazing, they balance out the story. They share experiences that other people can connect with. And so they are just as important as the super, super amazing people. I feel like I'm giving an Academy Award. Thank you to everyone. I'm going to keep thanking people. Thank you to all of the podcast hosts who have had me on as a guest to help share my story with my audience. I'm gonna tag all of you because there's so many of you. Thank you to every conference organizer, support group, different venues of sponsors, just anybody who has allowed me to grace their stage and present my story so that we can start to facilitate change in how caregivers are treated in the system, change to the support that they receive, change for caregivers and how they perceive what they're doing, how they care for themselves. There's just so much change that is possible. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that. It's just so special to me. Obviously, I have to thank Jerry. I have to thank my husband, because while I tell my story from my own experience as a caregiver, I can't tell my story without telling Jerry's story. They're intertwined, and Jerry lets me tell his story. Jerry lets me tell his story too. And there's some stories I know he wishes maybe I didn't tell, but he lets me be completely open, completely honest, and share everything. And he also lets me do all these crazy things that I keep, writing the book and speaking about things and writing my newsletter and creating courses and workshops, and just he's on board for all of it. And so I can't thank him enough for that support. I can't thank him enough for letting me share my message to support other caregivers. He saw firsthand the pain that I suffered, both during the process, and he witnessed my recovery. And so it's important to him that I'm okay. It's important to him that other caregivers are okay. And I'm just so, so thankful. And I couldn't have done all of it without all of you. We're not alone. And I guess that's one of the biggest takeaways, is we don't have to do this alone. We don't have to do it alone. So thank you for joining me today on the most important day of my life, July 19th. I love you all for listening. I love you all for being here. And if there's a caregiver in your life, give them a big hug. Just shoot them a text. Be like, hey, I'm thinking of you today and I love you. We're really not that complicated. We just want people to see us, feel us, hear us. We need to be seen. So send them some love. If you are not signed up to be an organ donor, consider it. Consider it. You can visit my website for the free download I talked about. You can visit UNOS, and you can, if you're ready to sign up, if you're not already, visit donatelife.net, and you can sign up to be an organ donor today. Thank you, everybody. Happy Regina's birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
You can learn more about organ donation and register to be an organ donor by visiting donatelife.net.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.